What's up, you guys? This is Rob from Gay Guy Plays, and today on the Daily Grind, we are going to be taking a look at the one lens focus farming wonder, Tanya. Now, there are actually several reasons why I wanted to go ahead and publish this video. As you guys know previously, I actually published two different focus farming videos. One was an alternative kind of farming with Saren using her spores, and then there was the kind of meta one using Equinox or Avara. However, because of the fact that I've been jumping around from focus schools and I really come trying to kind of like master them all, I didn't necessarily want to go ahead and spend a bunch of different lenses on a slew of weapons all over again, and I discovered that Tanya was actually fantastic as a one lens focus farming machine. The other reason that I wanted to go ahead and publish this was mainly because of the fact that I've gotten a lot of questions on my stream and sometimes in the comments asking, how are you using Arcwing in a mission? Which kind of leads me to believe that people don't quite know as much as they should about Tanya, and let me tell you right now, Tanya is a mother freaking powerhouse, regardless of what Life of Rio says. So let's go ahead and jump into a quick test. I'll show you some builds, and then we'll go ahead and jump into some gameplay. Now, to quickly answer the new player question, basically Tanya's ultimate shrinks her down into this little Exalted Arcwing form. So she turns into this mini fairy with some really powerful weapons. Well, really just one very powerful weapon, but we'll talk about that in a second. She's also granted 50% bonus evasion as well as 6 drones. Now, these drones have an increased threat rating, which give her a little bit of freedom to lay in some damage. So let's go ahead and take a look at how all that pans out. Now, the thing that I love most about Tanya is just like how non-threatening she seems. She's like this tiny little fairy with all of these butterfly effects on her, and she's about the size of a sentinel. Don't let the perspective fool you. She's actually pretty gosh darn tiny, but as you can see, she can deal a shit ton of damage. If you didn't catch it, that was a level 150 Billy. She is a powerhouse. Now, the reason that she's this strong is mainly because her Exalted Arcwing weapon, or weapons in this case, are the Dexpixia, and they're actually 80% slash base and have a 25% chance to proc status. So as you can see there, she uses a lot of slash procs to stack on top of her enemy, combine that with a little bit of viral, and she is hurting the shit out of them. She also has her melee weapon, the Dewata, but as you can see, I don't really use it because the stats on it are kind of crap. It really doesn't have great supplemental stats, so I'd just stick to the Dexpixia if you really want to lay in some serious hurt. Now, as for the build, I'm actually using her Eat Me variation, which I featured in the Eat Me, Drink Me builds a while back. I'll go ahead and link that up top if you want to take a look at a more CC-focused build. However, this one basically just keeps her permanently in Razor Wing. So as you can see, we've got the standard survivability mods. I put a lot of focus into her efficiency, and she's got a really big power pool, just so that she can kind of keep herself fueled to stay within Razor Wing. She's also got a little bit of stretch and a little bit of power strength. You could probably even swap out that cunning drift if you want and put in a little power drift, but the stretch is really just there for her CC abilities to kind of support her and the rest of her team, just in case she does want to do something that isn't necessarily Arcwing related. So just be aware too, you can cast all of your abilities while she's in her Razor Wing form. I'm just saying that for the new kids because I know I got some people that have no clue what is going on with Tanya. And this is my current setup for the Dexpixia. Now, for some of the newer players out there who don't really quite know how exalted weapons work, I do want to stress something to you. It does not matter what weapon you're using, all that really carries over are the mods on that weapon. So for example, we have exalted weapons like Chromatic Blade, Wukong's Extendipole thing, and of course, Tanya's Dexpixia. So if we're talking about Exalted Blade, the only thing that would matter are the mods on your melee weapon. The melee weapon stats themselves don't carry over, but the mods on them do. In this case, Tanya's Dexpixia actually works off of your primary weapon. And the interesting thing that comes into play here is you actually have two different mod sets that you can use, whether you want to use the rifle mod set or the shotgun mod set. Now, I played around with it myself, and I really like the shotgun mod set a little bit better currently. I do have that Prime Shred coming up, so I might retest a few things, but Hell's Chamber does give a bit more multi-shot, and we've got some punch through with Seeking Fury, and we've also got shotgun spaz with is a 90% fire rate. Now, the only 90% fire rate that they have on the rifles, I believe, is Vile Acceleration, which reduces your damage output a little bit. So I'm like, this is kind of like a good setup for me for now. I will play around with a couple other things in the future because, you know, that's how things go, but this is really like how I like to have things set up. And the last thing that I did want to mention is that I do have an Arcane Energized equipped on my SANDR. It actually synergizes really well with Prime Flow because the big energy pool is filled up really quickly with those energy spikes, and it gives you a nice little cushion just in case you run into energy drain, Eximus, or I don't know, you just kind of run into an RNG drought when it comes to orbs, because that can really suck sometimes when you don't have enough blue balls to keep yourself filled up. It's a sad moment. However, you can kind of counteract this just a little bit by using the Xenoric focus. So just in case you don't have access to Arcane Energized, just toss that on instead. And in between defense rounds or interception rounds, you can go ahead and jump back out of that real quickly, get yourself some more energy, then jump back in and cross at your fingers that RNG loves you a little bit more this time. Now let's go ahead and jump into what makes the Tanya a one lens wonder. Now, in order to do that, we need to understand how Affinity works. Now, there's actually a couple of different spreads, so if you're a little bit newer, you might not know this information, but Affinity spreads in a couple of different ways. If your Warframe kills an enemy, your Warframe gets 100, well, if your Warframe kills an enemy with a Warframe power, your Warframe gets 100% of that Affinity. If you kill an enemy with a weapon, 50% of that affinity goes to the weapon that makes the kill, and 50% goes to the Warframe. And lastly is what I like to call the general split. So this happens when allies near you that are in affinity range kill enemies, or when your sentinel or your companion kills an enemy. And basically this split is 25 goes to your Warframe, and the remaining 75 is split amongst the weapons you have equipped. So really easily put is basically if you've got a primary, secondary, and melee equipped, you're going to get 25% to each of those items. Now, if you only have a secondary and a melee equipped, what ends up happening is that 75 is split amongst your secondary and your melee. Now, clearly, there's the issue there, right? You have, in order to gain affinity the most efficiently, you're going to have to put lenses on every single one of your weapons. Unless, of course, you're using a Warframe that has an Exalted weapon. In Tanya's case, her Exalted weapon is her Razor Wing. So basically what happens when you have an Exalted weapon is you unequip all of your other weapons, and that's the only weapon that becomes available to you. So basically what happens is all of the affinity that you earn, whether it's from kills from your allies, or whether it's kills from you killing things, or your companion in some cases, because as you know, Tanya does not get to keep her companions while she's flying around in her Razor Wing. But basically what happens is all of those kills and all of that affinity ends up getting funneled through one place, which basically means that you only need one lens in order to be efficient. And actually, you know, the crazy thing about this is the third time that I've had to re-record this video today, just due to random issues. So I actually don't have any affinity to show you on this specific mission. However, I do have a screenshot from a previous mission. And as you can see here, Tanya pretty much got all of the affinity in that. I do have a lens on my Zaki, but as you can see, my Zaki didn't eat up any affinity whatsoever. There was a little bit at the start when we were breaking crates, and you got a little splash of the affinity there. However, beyond that, since I was able to stay at Arcwing pretty much the entire time, all of that affinity went straight to Tanya. And if you don't know what you're looking for on the screen right now, there's a little rose, a little flower thing that kind of like embodies the focus, and you can see it on top of Tanya's name and next to the Zaki's name, and that's how much focus points you've earned. I was gonna say focus affinity. Listen, my mouth is a little bit of a jumble. Now, before we do move along, I do want to point out a couple things because I did kind of glance over it a bit. One of the reasons why I love using Tanya is mainly because she feels basically like I'm using any other Warframe with a standard assault rifle, right? A lot of the times when you get into the Exalted weapon category, aside from like Peacemaker, which kind of, I want to say it counts, but I kind of want to say it doesn't count. It is technically an Exalted weapon and functions just like an Exalted weapon. However, it's really hard for people to continuously stay in that spot for extended amounts of time. You'll need some team support, and usually I'm jumping around in pubbies in order to farm my focus. But aside from that, the rest of them are pretty much melee. So if you're not a fan of the swing, swing, swing that you hear from Excalibur's Exalted Blade, you're gonna have to get in melee range for everything else. But for Tanya, she's got, you know, these assault pistols, if that's a thing, assault pistols. But that is what they are, it's a set of pistols. So it feels pretty much like you're playing Warframe with ranged weapons. You don't necessarily have to get in close to people's faces. Well, even though that you do get a really, really good range with Wukong's Primal Fury, but at least you don't have to deal with melee. You don't have to deal with jamming E the entire time. You can just shoot your weapon. And the cool thing about the Dexpixia is it does recharge just like normal Arcwing weapons. So you can see I can unload, and then it just regenerates almost instantly. So unload, and then it regenerates almost instantly. I don't need to like fly to the ground to pick up ammo. I don't really have to concern myself with that. I can just basically run and gun. Now, the other thing that I did want to point out is I did kind of glaze over the Dewata, and as you can see here, it's not the greatest performing weapon out there. It does have a really high base damage, which makes it function quite well, but the issue with it is it doesn't have any supplemental stats to note. Like, it's got some, but it's not fantastic. It's not like its primary where you get the slash base and you get, you know, a good status chance to go along with it. Literally, I'm a blob. But you don't get the status chance to go with it. So there aren't really any interesting or fantastic ways to mod it. It just has a lot of upfront damage, and beyond that, that's pretty much it. However, if you do want to kind of practice some of your archwingery, this does have a little bit of a, I guess you would call a dash attached to it. As you can see, that's not me pressing anything else but the melee key. So you can kind of dash enemies with it. If you feel kind of like getting up front in people's faces, you can pretty much do that because it's got its own lock on. So that should help some players deal with that, and you know, all of that affinity goes straight into your Archwing. So you should be fine and dandy with all of that. However, like I said, it's not as good as the Dexpixia. The Dexpixia scales way better than this. But you know, you can't win anything. I mean, I can put it on my wish list and we'll see what happens with that. But beyond that, that's pretty much it. So I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I'm really, really fond of kind of farming focus this way. And for those of you curious, I kind of put this up against my Sarin Spores build, you know, for focus, and it pretty much gets the exact same amount. It pretty much gets the exact same amounts when it comes to focus earned per mission. And it's not, you know, clearly it's not as good as the most meta way to do it with the stealth multipliers using using Equinox or I was going to call her Artemis, but I meant Ovara. Using either of those two, it's not going to grant you as much affinity, as much focus as that kind of farm does. However, if you do kind of want to switch things up a bit, if you do want to try something a little bit different, or maybe you don't have that many lenses to spare and you just really want to invest it into one specific Warframe because maybe you just swapped schools or something and you don't have the lenses to do it, this is a really, really cool way to go ahead and earn that affinity. And again, it's not locked on to just specifically to Tanya. You can use Excalibur, you can use Wukong, you can use Valkyr, even though she does have the thing where her energy consumption ramps up a little bit. You can use any of those ones to get yourself all of the affinity funneled into one frame. So let me know if you're going to try it out. Let me know if you've been trying it out. And that pretty much does it for this episode. So as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.